Awesome Sprinkles.
YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Welcome to my latest in series of videos where I talk about my thoughts on various suits of Toku. That's a weird way of putting it, but various suits from Toku in different categories. I've been trying to line some of these up based off of like recent debuts in the show. You know, I lined up my thoughts on second and third writers with the debuts of Alvarad and Rin's forms, and now we just most recently got what is our super form or our mid-series form, which I'll get into the categorization stuff in a second, which I unfortunately have to touch on. But hoping to have these line up more in the future. This is going to be a little bit later after it's debuted, just because of the schedule, but it should be within 2 weeks, which is pretty good for me. So these are effectively the mid-series forms, but also people call them super forms. Again, I hate the categorization stuff, like mainly because the fandom gets so hung up on it, like it actually matters in life. But it admittedly has gotten a little confusing because, as I've stated, when I first got into the series, you had your default suit and then you would have a final form, and then in between you would have the mid-series form. But somewhere along the way you started to get multiple suits in between. You effectively get two power-ups in between the first and the final, of which I've seen them be, sometimes the first one be called super, sometimes it be called upgrade. But this one is effectively the second one you get, the one right before your final form, which I call the mid-series, but some people call it super. So it's super or mid-series. I think that works because I think some have been sort of reclassified from before we had this. But anyway, that's enough preamble about this categorization nonsense. So I'm basing most of this off of the wiki, but there are a couple that I'm going to talk about that I sort of consider to be mid-series forms, just for the sake of this list. But it's just meant to be fun. At the end of the day, it's just me giving my thoughts on suits, and it doesn't matter. So starting off at the beginning of, this is all modern series. I don't think or know if any count from the Showa, but this is all modern series. So Kuga, Amazing Mighty. Again, this would be one that I think is probably recategorized as super because I think this debuted way past mid-series. I think I remember it being pretty late in the series. But anyway, I really like this suit. I like the Kuga suit in general. It's a good classic rider suit. I'm a sucker for kind of a black suit Spider-Man type of deal. You know, this isn't that same storyline, but you know what I mean. Kind of a black repaint of the main suit. And black gold's probably my second favorite Toku aesthetic outside of a good white Toku suit. So in general, it's a winner for me. Agito's burning form is okay. I don't really hate it. I don't really love it. I think it's overall fine. I think it's pretty cool for what it is. The only negative I have to say about it is I think it's kind of boring that it kind of just molts into shining form. Like, the idea is kind of cool in terms of like it shedding it off, but it makes both forms being so similar kind of boring. You have Phi's Axle, which I'm going to be honest, like this and Blade Jack, I always just thought was their singular ability form that they got, but I guess this is considered a super form of sorts. Again, it's on the list. Might as well talk about it here. I always did like the Axle suit, though. I thought it was slick and cool, and I always liked its ability. Blade Jack form, on the other hand, is, it kind of looks like when you have, I don't know if you've had this, I'm sure people have had this before, but I've had some older toys that are white plastic, and then they kind of get yellow after they're older. That's kind of what this form is like. Hibiki Kurenai, see, I would classify these more as like the first upgrade, but again, it doesn't matter. I always loved Kurenai for a while. It was my favorite of the suits. It's just kind of basically a simple red repaint in a lot of ways, but it's very effective, looks very cool. I think I went back to Hibiki's Prime form being my favorite just because I think the purple's more unique, but this is still a really cool yet simple form. Denno Climax form. Now this is where I felt we really started to get more traditional categorized, like this is the mid-series form where it became more usual. It's not my favorite suit, but I think it's one of the better ones at being kind of a collage amalgam suit. If you watched my videos before where I've had to discuss this, I'm not the biggest fan of the sort of amalgam forms where they kind of have like a weird collage-y aspect. I find it to be kind of fugly, but I think this is one of the better ones because I think it makes clever use of like making Ryutaros's like helmet the chest, which really works, and then making the others the shoulder pads. Like, you can tell it's that, but I think it kind of is a little more seamless. Kiva, I guess they considered Obaki form for it. Like, I don't know, it's just one of those basic ones where you have all the abilities going on at once. I don't like it as much as like Trinity. I don't think it flows very well together. Kamen Rider Doubles Fang Joker, excellent suit, one of my favorites of the main suits. It's got kind of a nice kind of badass, like edgy primal look to it. The white and black contrast is simple yet effective. You know, I love that it can kind of protrude these various spiked elements off. Just a great suit. Tajador, another great suit. I love the O suits in general. I like that this one is like considered special and it's like a main upgrade, like a mid-series form, and you have a unique helmet and like the waffle iron on it, simply because it's like related to Ankh. I don't recall them giving a reason in the series why this was kind of a little bit more special than the other combos, just because the only reason I thought it was special was narratively because of Ankh, which I always found funny. Forze Magnet States, I'm not the biggest fan of. I do respect it for being kind of unique, but I always kind of expect the main power-ups to be a little bit cooler. This feels more like a one-off ability form, so Kind of like some of the other Forza forms, I have respect for its uniqueness, but it's not my favorite. Now for this list on the wiki, they count all Dragon as the mid-series. I just kept, because this is back when there was just one. So I count the mid-series to effectively be Flame Dragon, and I really do like it. I prefer the base form wizard suits more. I think like the black contrast and the jewel aspects has a little bit more elegance. But I think the overall Dragon power-ups for this are a really good power-up form, a really nice evolution of it. I like that he got one for all of his different elemental forms, kind of like Kuga did, and that they each had a different aspect of the dragon that comes into all Dragon. I think is pretty cool. Then you have Kachadoki Arms, easily one of my favorite power-ups, or my favorite mid-series forms, or super forms, or whatever you want to call them. Just an absolutely great evolution of the concept of his suit being this badass orange Shogun warrior. Love the jingle for it too, just has always been one of my favorites. Drive-type formula is okay. I like the idea that this being an evolution of his suit kind of plays off of the speed aspect, within a formula car being faster than just whatever his car is based off of. But it is kind of fugly. It dips into that fugly Toku category of like, you just have a car running through him. I don't know, there's aspects I like, but it's not my favorite. I also was really annoyed, I never bought it, but that when you bought the figure art, you had to put the stickers on yourself. Put the stickers on for me, I'm Nacho Maid! Ghost. So Ghost Damashi form, or Grateful Damashi form, I just saw the word Damashi on there and I read it. Anyway, I do like this suit. I think it's a cool suit. It's got that good black gold color scheme. It's got this royalty feel to it. However, it is my least favorite of all of Ghost's forms. Not in an overly negative way, like I don't like it, but it takes away from a lot of what I like about Ghost's aesthetic, which I love the hoodie thing. You know, Ghost is one of my favorite main suits because it's like two of my favorite things, Halloween and hoodies. And the concept of like the hoodie thing and the paranormal feel and the historical figures as well, it's just all kind of lost here. I think it's a great suit, but it's just so divorced from everything I actually like about the other Ghost suits. Sade Maximum Gamer. I'll be honest, I've never been a huge fan of this one. I don't necessarily respect it, but not that I disrespect it, but I do think it's fun. Like, it's fun looking, but kind of like Forza Magnet states, it kind of feels more like an upgrade armor or an ability form, and it just feels weird as one of the main upgrades that he's effectively just riding in this giant face suit. Now build is where I felt we started the tradition of slide evolutions, where you would have these forms related to each other. So effectively when you got a power-up form or a super form, you would get multiple ones at the same time. And this was also one of the first times in a while we had done a Berserk form, and we had done it before with stuff like Puto Tira, but this is when it became pretty regular to have the mid-series or super form be accompanied by an obligatory, I'm exhausted, I'm going Berserk storyline. But I like the way Build handled it, probably because it was the first time we really saw it before it became nauseating, kind of like the Gold and Silver forms in Sentai. But the Black Hazard suit is extremely simple. Almost so simple, I'm surprised they kept it around. Like, he had to come up with the reason for Rabbit and Tank, and it makes this feel more like it was just there to explain them, and yet they brought this suit back later, even though it's relatively simple, but I liked it for that. Also giving those black suit Spider-Man vibes. I like that the idea was, if I'm recalling correctly, that it was so powerful, you know, the nebula gas would effectively eventually make him nuts, and that's why he needed to rein it in with Rabbit, Rabbit, Tank, Tank. But I like that sometimes he just needed that power boost so much he would risk it and use it, or use it in short spurts. It was also cool that they were able to use it for several other different combos, and you have the different eyes. As far as Rabbit, Rabbit, and Tank, Tank, I like them okay. I oddly enough like Black Hazard a little bit more for the simplicity, kind of giving a stealth suit vibe. Rabbit, Rabbit, and Tank, Tank are overall fine suits, and I also, like, again, I mainly like the story context around it. I think it was clever the way they came up with the reason for them to exist, and like the reasoning for like why they would work, because you're kind of putting two alike things together, because usually Build's forms are based off of an organic and an inorganic, and this was doing like two organics and two inorganics. That was cool. Geo. So this list here lists both Geo 2 and Trinity as it. I'm going to be honest, I consider Geo 2 to be like the first upgrade form, so I'm just going to talk about Trinity here and save Geo 2 for if I ever do those first power-up forms. So Trinity grew on me over time. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of these fugly, like, art project amalgam collage forms. It grew on me over time, just in general seeing it more. I'm like, okay, it's kind of fine for what it is, but mainly I did like that because it represented unifying the three main writers, it kind of represented the three different timelines, which of course was the Gates, so used to saying the Geats name. The Gates Omageo future, you know, the Waz powers come from the Gates future, the White Waz future, and then of course Geo representing the future that they're hopefully heading towards. I thought that was cool. Metal Cluster Hopper is overall pretty cool. I feel it's missing something a little bit. I think that it could have some other colors or contrast a little bit. It's a little bit too plain. Like, I like the overall design. I think it's pretty cool. Even though it was a Berserk form, I did like the context, if I remember right, that it was Thouser, like, basically tricking him. That was kind of a cool aspect. But it's funny because you have Shining Hopper getting the Assault Wolf, which I felt was unnecessary. Like, they both looked cool. But I felt like this one needed the Assault Wolf thing, because I think Shining Hopper looked good on its own, and this one just needs a little extra something. Saber, you have the slight evolution of Primitive Dragon, which was a Berserk form, and then you have Elemental version, which was kind of like him gaining control of it. You also had like a small Lion Senki variant, but that's whatever. I liked Primitive Dragon a lot. I like that far better than Elemental Dragon. Elemental Dragon is okay, but it's a little bit too loud for me. I thought Primitive Dragon was a lot cooler of a suit, literally. Like, it had a very cool color to it. And it's definitely one of those ones where they just kind of abandoned it, which was unfortunate. I feel like we almost saw it like a grand total of 3 times before it disappeared. And that's the thing I like least about the Slight Evolution. Like, given that this is a franchise that makes money off of merchandising, I understand that they're going to be introducing a lot of stuff. That's just par for the course. But I don't mind it so long as you integrate it into the show well. And, you know, I don't mind the idea. It gets a little bit exhausting, to be honest, but I don't mind the idea of having Slight Evolution and multiple variants of a form. But, you know, make them count. Have a cool story. Have them be used more. And the fact that we abandoned this form, especially, it's funny that, like, Primitive Dragon feels like a way more finished suit than Black Hazard, and yet Black Hazard was brought back way more. Speaking of, then you have the 1-2 punch of Jack Revice and Thundering Gale. Jack Revice is a badass suit. Really badass suit. But it was basically just there to serve the Berserk storyline, and then we got Thundering Gale. And that one's cool too. That one's very loud. It definitely feels like a sports sneaker commercial from the 90s, but I do like it. I honestly think it's pretty cool. It kind of reminds me in a way of what I like about the juxtaposition of the bright pink coloring and the evil demon look of main Revice suit. That you have this very demon looking suit and this very bright and colorful looking suit is really cool. But Jack Revice was severely underutilized. I think that's why they reused assets for the demon form for his dad. But yeah, that's an unfortunate one. Now here we have Geats, one of the most recent ones, with boost form and then laser boost, both of which I liked. Definitely felt that, like, okay, this is really cool, the boost form, but I feel like it's missing a little something, and sort of breaking it up with the white and blue when you got the laser form definitely fixed that. I do like the main form on its own, though. I like the idea of it just kind of representing the speed boost form. And that was another one where they didn't use it a ton afterwards, but they did use it a couple times, because I think the idea was here he would be exhausted, and the laser one would give him a power boost and help him, but this one was faster, I believe. So there was a couple times where he just needed to transform quickly, or he didn't have access to the laser power-up. So we did get to see it a handful of times after we debuted the second one, which was nice. But I like the laser boost form just a little bit more. I think it's a really great contrast, not to mention adding in the future-y aspects from that suit, plus the story context of it coming from a supporter was really cool. Of course, we have the most recent 1-2 punch of Iron Gotchard and Platinum Gotchard, both of which I really like. I'm not the biggest fan of the stupid train arms. I wish that there was a way, like, he takes them off when he can fire them, but I wish there was a way sometimes he didn't have them on, or could maybe reduce them, like maybe they would become these gauntlets and then you can supersize them or something. But setting aside that fugly aspect, it's a really cool looking suit. It's got a lot of really cool color contrast. I like the kind of caged element to it. I like the story context of him just having to use the one chemi, which is the Steamliner, which usually isn't his primary because he's always with, you know, Hopper 1. And I thought that was kind of cool. And I also like that both of these forms each represent the individual aspects of his alchemy, where you have, you know, Hopper and Steamliner, and then he basically one of each gets a form in a way. And I love Platinum Gotchard. I think it's unfortunate how much I'm not a fan of the show and how much I hate Hotro, because I love that suit so much. It might even be my favorite of these suits. It's just a really well-designed suit. You got the classic white Toku suit with the gold contrast, which looks great. You have a little bit of Iron Gotchard's aspects in there with the blue. It just works so well. I just love it a lot. But that is my thoughts on all those suits. Let me know your favorite of these super mid-series forms. Again, I will continue this series, sometimes lining it up. I don't know if I'll wait all the way till next year before I do upgrade forms, but we'll see. But is there any types you'd like to see me do next, you know, while I wait for something to line up, like Six Rangers or something like that? But until then, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.